Can you believe it's week 9 already?
No, it's
Wow, right? Exactly. You look at something from the beginning and you say, wow, this is going to be 16 weeks. It's so long, 4 months. And now it's almost over already.
I know, right? It's crazy.
It really is. It really is. So, welcome to week 9. We are going to talk about the digestive system. And this is one of my favorites because I happen to love eating. And that's what this is all about. Well, it's not all about eating. The digestive system goes from your mouth all the way to your anus. And then on its way in the middle there, and we'll talk about this, but there are what are called accessory organs. So it's a not straight line, but a continuous path from the mouth to the anus. And then the accessory organs, the pancreas and the gallbladder and the liver, all contribute to helping the food, if you'll pardon the pun, digest. Okay. So it's very important that you understand, and you may remember in like elementary school, this was called the alimentary canal, and it's still known as the alimentary canal. The digestive system includes those accessory organs. The alimentary canal is the not so straight line from your mouth to your anus. Okay. So as you can see, there are a lot of terms that you want to look at and become familiar with, especially because unlike when you're looking at terms, medical terminology, which describes conditions, diseases, or procedures, services, treatments, those terms tend to be multi-parted, right? You learned that from week 1, where there may be a prefix, there's going to be a root term, and there's going to be the suffix. Okay. But as you will notice, the terms used for anatomical sites are singular words that you can't necessarily break down like you can parse esophagogastroduodenoscopy. One of my favorite terms, just because I like saying it, which is a scope that is put down the patient's esophagus through the mouth, esophagus, esophagus, gastro, which is the stomach, remember, duodenum, which is the duodenum, which is where the stomach meets the small intestine, and then oscopy, which is to view. All right. That is a procedure that is done most frequently when a patient is having problems with their stomach. It might be pain in the stomach. It might be a hiatal hernia. It might be a problem with the esophagus. It might be GERD. Okay. That's how we get inside. And the good news is that because it goes through the mouth, which is a natural orifice. Orifice is the fancy medical term for opening. Orifix. Okay. And remember, the mouth, a lot of terms, medical terms that you've been studying regarding the mouth begin with oro, O-R-A, or O-R-O, oro, just like oral, right? Oral is to speak. So that all comes from here. Orifice, opening. When a procedure can be done using a natural opening, that means no scalpel, no cutting into the body, which means there are no incisions to heal. It also means less opportunity for infection. and very often a much faster recovery from the procedure. And much like colonoscopies, they can attach like little clippers to that endoscopy tool to not only look, but then they can take out a polyp, remove a mass, do a biopsy, all kinds of things. But again, when they take it out, the patient wakes up, no incisions to heal. And that is very beneficial to everyone involved in doing procedures. Okay, so we have the mouth, we have the esophagus. You remember the esophagus runs right next door to the trachea. The trachea, remember last week we did respiratory system. The trachea, we bring oxygen in through your nose and your mouth, and that goes down the trachea into your lungs. When we put food in our mouths and we swallow, it goes down the esophagus into your stomach. And people choke when those two things get confused. Okay. All right. So next we have the liver, which is this weird looking shaped thing here. It's right here behind your lower ribs. Okay. And then, of course, you have your stomach, which is over here. And isn't that funny? I mean, I think it's funny because most people think their stomach is right here at the top of their abdomen, and it's really off to the left side. Then the stomach goes around the gallbladder and the pancreas, which we'll look at in a few minutes, and then into the small intestine. And isn't this weird? Is you see all the squiggly lines in the center here? That's the small intestine. The small intestine is actually much longer than the large intestine. So evidently, it's not named small because of its length. It's named small because of its diameter. And then that leads to the large intestine right at the appendix and the ileum. That's ileum with an E for end of small intestine, ileum. That goes right into the ascending, transverse, descending, large colon, the large intestine and the colon, and then the rectum, and then the anus. And then that's it. We're done. We're done with all the food. Took all the nutrients out. Go ahead. What?
Isn't it that the small intestine is actually about like 22 feet long?
That could be. I don't know that by memory, but very likely, yes. It is very, very long.
I remember being told that once. That's why I was asking.
Okay. Well, I'll have to Google that later. What we would ever do without Google. All right. So let's start at the beginning, which is the mouth. And most people, you know, yes, you're familiar with your teeth, which are very, very important. Okay. And of course, you have your tongue, which is very, very important. And then you have your uvula, which is the thing hanging in the back of your throat when you go, ah, right? Ah. And then you have the tonsils back there and the adenoids back there in the back of the throat, also known as the oropharynx, which is the pharynx. Remember when we were talking about the respiratory system last week, we talked about the nasopharynx, which is where the nasal passages lead into the pharynx, which goes down, right? So there are three parts of the pharynx: the nasopharynx, which tells you this is the part of the pharynx that's behind the nose, then the oropharynx, which is behind the mouth. Okay, so when you can understand, it's fun because you understand. Okay. So then of course you have your lips. You've also, if you watch television, whenever they do a if you've ever seen, they do a buccal, so they call it a buccal swab, where they put the swab inside the cheek of someone and rub it inside the cheek. That's called a buccal swab because the inside of your cheek is referred to as the bucus. Okay, you see how that is? Okay, so your teeth, your gums, all of this is part of your digestive system. And remember that as your teeth chew the food, your teeth need to do that not only to break up the food so you can swallow it, but also to engage saliva, which helps it slide down, as well as cleanse the mouth. But you also need to remember that, of course, your mouth, inside your gums, okay, are connected to your cardiovascular system. There are veins and arteries that come in here. And what does that mean? That means that bacteria that can build up from lack of proper oral care can get into your bloodstream, and there is evidence that rotten teeth, cavities that don't get filled, people who don't brush their teeth or brush their teeth properly and get all that goop and plaque in their teeth, that can definitely cause heart problems, because it gets into the bloodstream. And where's the blood go? Goes right to the heart. So when you're teaching your children to brush their teeth, or your significant other or whoever, the fact is that brushing your teeth and making sure you get your teeth cleaned and this area without bacteria is not only important to have a nice smile and to have good breath, it's also very important for the health of the entire body, because as you know, anything that gets in the bloodstream gets to touch every cell in the entire body. So this is very important. Good oral care. And you know, it can be scary lying in a dentist chair. And I know I'm a dentist daughter. I worked in my dad's office, and lying in a dentist chair makes you feel very vulnerable. But if you have a good dentist, with cleaning your teeth even once a year, twice a year is better, and brushing your teeth on a regular basis is really so important, not only for your mouth health, but for your entire body. Okay, I'll move on now. Right to the stomach. All right, so in the center of this picture, you can see the esophagus, and that's where the esophagus connects into the stomach. And if you didn't know, isn't that kind of weird that it connects not right into the top of the stomach, but on the side? Okay, that curve around the top is called the fundus. And that's that rounded part. And you can see that the multiple parts of the stomach that get all involved in digesting your food and extracting nutrients from that food, which is why it's important to eat somewhat healthy food. Now, I'm not against like McDonald's or gyros or Taco Bell, because I kind of like that. Okay, but you got to balance that out. Remember, balance is the secret to life. So you got to balance that out with some real veggies, not just the lettuce on the taco. That kind of sort of doesn't really count. I count it, but it's got to be, you know what I'm saying. Go to a farmer's market once in a while. Yeah. Okay. So esopho, the esophagus, gastro, the stomach. And isn't that just a weird shape for the stomach? I think they just kind of thought that they would just kind of stick it in and shape it however it fit in the area. This is a very busy area of the body, you know, lots of things going on, lots of organs happening over here. So there you go. And then as we get to the pylorus, which is the distal, if you will, the farthest point of the stomach. That's like the end of the stomach. Okay. As it leads into the pyloric sphincter, the sphincter, and we have, I want to say 32 sphincters in our entire body. And a sphincter is kind of like a rubber band. Okay. And it's usually at an access point. And so you can tighten the muscles around the sphincter, and that closes off that area. So the pyloric sphincter will prevent the food and what's in your stomach from going any further until it is properly processed. Okay. And then the sphincter will open, and then the material can continue on into the duodenum. Esopho, gastro, duodenoscopy. See how that all fits together to describe what they're looking at. Okay. And that's how your food goes. And then the duodenum is the beginning of the small intestine. Okay. So sphincters are, like I said, you have like 32 of them throughout your body. And they are there to control inflow and outflow. Okay. So your anus is a sphincter. You may have heard that term, anal sphincter. We'll get to that in a minute. Okay. So that's an important thing for you to understand. Okay. Any questions so far? I'll take that.
Ma'am.
Okay. All right. So here we have the mishmash in our abdomens. It's really quite organized, but it's kind of, you know, it's kind of pretty, isn't it? Okay. As I said before, the pink in the middle is your small intestine. Okay. So if we start in the upper right hand inside corner, you see where it says jejunum. So that's the beginning. That goes from the duodenum to the jejunum. And that's officially in the beginning of the small intestine. And we go around and 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 around. And then in the lower left hand inside corner, you see where it says ileum, ileum, E for end of small intestine, not to be confused with ilium, which is part of your pelvis. It's a bone. Okay. They didn't invite me to the meeting. I would have cautioned them against naming things so closely together, but what can I say? They're all dead now, by the way. All right. So the ileum connects at the cecum, and you see this in the lower left-hand outside corner. You see the little taily thing, that little taily thing. And it looks like it's connected to the rectum, but it's not. Okay. But that's connected. That's your appendix. And nobody knows why it's there. There have been stories that say when humans evolved from animals, that used to be the tail, like a monkey's tail. But as we evolved, we didn't need a tail anymore. So that is what's left. I don't know, but it's there. It's there, and it's not bothering anybody. If it bothers you, you got to get it taken out. So anyway, and then we get into the cecum. So that's where the small intestine connects to the large intestine. Okay. Now, this is something that is important as you move forward. Is the large intestine is everything here on the outside. Okay. From the cecum to the anal canal and the anal sphincter. Okay. The part from the cecum to the sigmoid colon before the rectum is known as the colon. Not a dot with a comma under it. This is the last part of the digestive system. And you have the ascending colon as it comes up from the cecum, the transverse colon, the descending colon, because as you see, it makes a nice little frame around the small intestine. It's very compact, very organized. Okay. Then you get to the sigmoid colon, the rectum, also sometimes referred to as the rectal vault, and then the anal canal and the anal sphincter. And then you're out. Okay. All right. So it is very, very organized. And your job is to understand the medical terminology so that when there's a scope, meaning to look at, or plasty, meaning to repair, or itis, meaning inflammation, all of those are suffixes. And if you attach any one of those suffixes to any one of these terms, to identify where is that infection, where is that repair happening, where are we looking. So now you understand a colonoscopy is to look at the colon, and they take an endoscope similar to when they do the esophagogastroduodenoscopy. The colonoscopy enters in another natural orifice, the anal sphincter, the anal canal, goes up through the rectum, around the sigmoid colon, through the descending colon, around the flexure, transverse into the transverse colon, around the flexure to, which is just the turns, okay, into the ascending colon, and to the cecum and the appendix. You can usually visualize the appendix in a colonoscopy. Okay, colon, oscopy to see. Make sense? This is what happens every time you eat something. Isn't that weird? Okay, now we get to the accessory organs. These are right here in your upper abdomen, or the center part of your torso, right below, behind your ribs, the lower part of your rib cage. We have the liver, which then sends bile through the hepatic ducts into the gallbladder, which then goes into the pancreas. The pancreas is that kind of butternut squash. It's thinner than a zucchini. Okay, it could look like a zucchini. It kind of looks like a penis. Okay, but that's okay because this is a medical class, and that's a medical term. Okay, and then there are the ducts where the pancreas, part of the pancreas, releases this fluid, for lack of a better word, into the duodenum, and that aids digestion, and that helps process the food, take out the nutrients, and pass along the waste. Okay. The other part of the pancreas is where insulin lives. So when you have a diabetic patient, it you know, they always talk about glucose in the bloodstream. And yes, that's what it's all about. However, all of that is function of the pancreas. And so essentially, a patient who has diabetes has a malfunctioning pancreas. And that's the truth. So if you look at this area of the body, you see right above, you have the liver, the stomach, the pancreas, and of course the duodenum that's going into the small intestine. A lot happening there. Got to protect it. Okay. All right. So that is your digestive system. It's complex, but it's not complex in its function. And, you know, like I said, everything is kind of in a straight line. It's very orderly. And the terms will require your familiarity. So, as I always tell you, review this often. If you're not exactly positively sure what a word means, look it up. After you've looked up the same word 4 or 5 times, it'll then stick in your head. Okay. And if you're ever unsure, query, query, query. In class, you query me. That's ask me, send me an email. I'm happy to explain. When you're at work, you will query the writer of the documentation, which typically will be the physician. And every facility has a query method. So it's not like you're going over to the doctor and tapping him on the shoulder or her on the shoulder and saying, "What do you mean? I don't understand." Okay. And it's very, very important that you understand the language of where you want to work, regardless of your job. All right. Remember, we now have a dedicated medical terminology tutor. If you don't want to email me, you can email her. That's very nice. It's very good. Sometimes it's good to get 2 perspectives. Okay. Whatever helps you. This is the point. It doesn't matter who you reach out to for help as long as it's somebody who knows things. I mean, really knows things. Okay. But now we have an additional layer to that. And other than that, I am here for you 7 days a week, not 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Yes, I will respond to you within 24 hours. We can email back and forth. We can set up an appointment to speak on the phone. We can do Skype. We can do Zoom. We can do FaceTime, whatever makes you happy. I'm here to support you so you become knowledgeable and successful in your new career. Okay?
Okay.
Any questions?
No, ma'am, not about the material.
You have questions about something else?
Yes, ma'am.
Do you want me to turn off the recording?
Yes, ma'am.
Thanks for joining us. Not you, say here. Okay.
Okay.